Hello everyone, and welcome to the first episode of a brand new series I like to call Screen Chat. This is meant to be a peek behind the Dungeon Master's screen for both older and newer players and Dungeon Masters wanting to learn more about the various enemies and non-player characters they can come across in the Forgotten Realms of Dungeons & Dragons. Each episode provides a general explanation of the who, the what, the where, and of course the how of a specific group or type of NPCs or types of NPCs, as well as how to best use them in your own adventures based on my own experiences and advice I've gotten from other Dungeon Masters. And to start us off, let's take a deep dive into everyone's favorite feral hyena folk, Gnolls. Gnolls are a common enemy players can encounter in Dungeons & Dragons. They've been a staple of the game since the days of 1st edition when they first debuted in the Advanced Dungeons & Dragons campaign, Ruins of Adventure. They're described as wiry humanoids, usually ranging between 7 to 7.5 feet tall and weighing 280 to 320 pounds. Gnolls also have gray, coarse skin with thick, furry manes that range in color from red to brown and are sometimes even spotted or striped. The Monster Manual in Mordenkainen Presents Monsters of the Multiverse describes them as hyena-headed humanoids that attack without warning, slaughtering their victims and devouring their flesh. They generally live in warm plains, though they're highly adaptable and can be found living in most regions, sometimes even underground. However, the hyena comparisons do not stop there. According to legend, all Gnolls are descendants from the demon prince Yeenoghu, pronounced Yi-No-Gu, the ruler of ruin and the lord of savagery. When the demon lord hunted across the material plane, packs of hyenas followed in his wake, and those that ate of the great demon prince's kills and survived became Gnolls. Few others worship the beast of butchery, but those who do tend to take on a gnoll-like aspect, hunching over and filing their teeth down to points. Even to this day, he views the Gnolls as his favorite children, often sending them visions and signs either in nature or in dreams in order to commit atrocities or attack other peoples in his name and spread his ideology and beliefs about the end of civilization and the return to the wilderness and the primal lifestyle he treasures above all else. Dragon Magazine's issue number 367 in 2008 goes into greater detail about their origin, explaining how Yeenoghu took a few of his mightiest and most savage demons and fed them to a pack of mortal hyenas. The essence of the demons fused with the animals, and their children were the first of the Gnolls, fierce humanoid creatures combining the traits of cunning hyena and vicious fiend. Yeenoghu charged the Gnolls to spread horror in his name, bathing the lands in blood and bringing suffering to all things unfortunate enough to cross paths with the children of Yeenoghu. Today, most Gnolls agree that Yeenoghu did indeed craft their race from demon and beast, but not all worship him. Quote, "Though the fury of the fiend runs through the blood of the Gnoll, some reject this demonic heritage and find solace in the spirit of the hyena that lies within them." In 5th edition, these differences can best be seen in the different interpretation of Gnolls in both Faerun and Eberron. Faerun Gnolls generally follow the will of Yeenoghu. Their primal instinct was a strong part of their psyche and is manifested in them being natural predators that savored the thrills of the hunt. Almost all Gnolls preferred the wilderness to the civilized enclaves favored by humans, dwarves, or other similar peoples, and those that do take to cities often thought of them as just another kind of landscape, one that they sometimes had difficulty adjusting to. Gnoll society is generally structured around hunting parties known as packs. Each pack often operates independent of one another, though alliances between packs are not unheard of. Packs will engage in a number of activities, including hunting, scavenging, foraging, protecting nature, and occasionally attacking travelers or unguarded or remote settlements that are deemed as threats by Yeenoghu. While the reasons for these attacks can vary, it is generally agreed to be a part of their culture as a demonstration of might and authority. Often, when a Gnoll decides to leave their pack or defy the will of Yeenoghu, they are outcast from other Gnolls and forced to fend for themselves. To make matters worse, few civilizations trust Gnolls due to both their demonic origins and prejudice from prior attacks. It is not an easy life for the outcasts, but one that few ever turn back from once started. It's important to remember a few key points within Gnoll culture and ideology before we go forward. First and foremost, there is a strong, intrinsic bond between Gnolls of the same bloodline and their family. Gnoll clans can and do fight one another, often to establish leaders or question authority, but pack mentality is a powerful force within Gnoll life. As such, while Gnolls prefer their own kind, they can and often do work with other peoples as needed. A good role-playing idea is to play up a Gnoll's sense of loyalty and camaraderie with the group. Consider maybe choosing to have them play as a divine caster like a cleric or paladin. Maybe have them choose a nature path like druid or ranger. Or, on the role-playing side, maybe have them start off more taciturn and aloof with the party, then develop a specific bond with one character, become extremely protective and emotionally connected to them, and be more likely to risk their safety for that one character. In Eberron, the Gnolls have taken on a different role in society. According to the book Eberron, Rising from the Last War, quote, "The Gnolls of Droam, once servants of Rak Tolkesh, broke ties with the demon lords long ago and swore an oath of loyalty to the pack above all else. Since standing together and being bound by this Zanir pact, the Gnolls have never been subjugated by any other force and have never sought to conquer. Instead, they sell their services as hunters and soldiers, serving all warlords. The Gnolls have become a stabilizing force respected by all the warlords, a force that has considerable influence in the young nation. Although they still prefer the company of their own bloodline, the Gnolls of Droam consider all Gnolls to be united under the pact, and they know that it is this unity that has allowed them to prosper in Droam. They maintain the strong pack instinct found in all Gnolls, but they have extended this loyalty to the entire pact and to their allies. In short, the book offers an excellent model for both why and how Gnolls would choose to forsake or adapt their demonic heritage, as well as how they would cooperate and function with other civilizations and peoples. Now, I know this is a lot of information for you to use, but you may be asking, how should you roleplay or run combat using Gnolls? Well, that's actually the easiest part. However you want. Boo! Okay, but in all seriousness, here are some tips and writing ideas I've discovered while using Gnolls in my own campaign. First and foremost, I recommend starting with these 3 core writing questions. First, what do you want to accomplish with your interpretation of Gnolls? Do you want to create a simple but still engaging and memorable adversary for your heroes to face off against? Do you want them to be more sympathetic or have a sense of depth to why they attack other peoples and have a resentment against civilization? Or do you want to come up with your own reinterpretation that is more favorable and more nuanced on how Gnolls not only view themselves, but the rest of the world around them? Regardless of what your motivation is, being able to define and explain it to others will greatly assist you in your efforts to create your own versions of Gnolls, whatever they are. Second, drawing from the idea of prior examples, it's a good idea to keep a single vision of what you want to use your Gnolls for, but don't be afraid to draw from multiple sources. One of the best ways I found to become inspired and use creative outlets is to be able to draw from multiple ideas from across various mediums, games, and movies. For example, is there a fictional character or group from another property that you think emulates many of the Gnoll traits or ideas? Be it their tenacity, their ability to attack in packs, or something as simple as their connection to nature. When doing your own research, is there a certain idea you think could be expanded upon in Gnoll culture or Gnoll ideology? You should always keep yourself focused on that first goal in question 1, but don't be afraid to branch out and try new ideas. But with that being said, rule 3. Be aware of and try to avoid as much as possible common cliches, pitfalls, and worst of all, stereotypes when writing your characters. I won't go into too much detail on why this is a bad idea, nor can I explain when or how you will know when you're using one. Hopefully, when you're completing steps 1 and 2, you will be able to use them to avoid these situations in the first place, but if you ever feel like your interpretation may be too derivative or harmful, don't worry about it too much. The best advice I can give is to always get feedback from either your players or other DMs, as well as your own gut feeling and intuition. If it feels unsafe or uncertain, don't be afraid to ask for help or try a different approach. Now, with that being said, here are a few ideas I found to be a really great starting point for interpreting Gnolls. First and foremost, take a look at their hierarchy and government. Remember that pack and family bonds are vital and of utmost importance to Gnoll culture. And while they might squabble to establish lines of dominance, between such challenges, Gnolls are steadfast allies. In battle, Gnolls are strong team players that set aside any thought of personal glory to assist their allies. When you're creating a character or an NPC, look at their relationship to their pack. Did they choose to stay for a certain reason? What draws them to their family members, and why do they like them? How do they interact with the organization of the pack? And what is the specific roles or functions they have in their society? From there, you can also look at their relationship with their religion, specifically with Yeenoghu and other demon rulers. Remember, the Abyss isn't just full of giant hyenas and the Stranger Things giant Demogorgon monster. There are various other rulers that the Gnolls can interact with or face off against their cultists and allies, such as the Demogorgon, Fraser Blue, or Orcus. Don't be afraid to compare and contrast each of the different demon princes' ideologies and philosophies, highlighting the specific overlaps that they may share or key disagreements that they may not like. For example, with Fraser Blue, someone who is all about deception, manipulation, and collecting of material wealths. How would a Gnoll react to these very materialistic and monetarily focused cultists who view money, fame, and fortune above all else? Finally, consider looking at the Gnolls' view of nature and society. Remember, they are survivalists. They are rugged individualists who love the outdoors, love living in nature, and above all else, believe in Yeenoghu's belief of the destruction of civilization being the ultimate end goal of sentient life and for the universe. You could always see them as accelerationists who wish to just simply destroy society and see everyone revert back to a quote-unquote primal existence. Or you could bend the demonic connection entirely and make them the defenders of the wild, furious guardians who battle orc and elf alike in an effort to preserve the sanctity of nature. You can also look at this as a very rugged, individualistic, and physical society that views accomplishments and actions above all else. And remember, while no behavior seems aggressive, they are simply people that like direct answers and like being straight with others. They like the truth, and they will demand an answer not because they think they're entitled to it, but because they are used to always receiving it. They view the truth as the only means of communicating. Now, to tie this all into my own personal examples in Yugoloth Tabletop, I'll keep it brief, but essentially, my interpretation of the Gnolls started first and foremost with their interpretation of Yeenoghu. I wanted to create a Gnoll society that was still faithful to Yeenoghu's primary teachings, but also had a few of their own virtues and reasons for wanting to cooperate with themselves and with nature. I looked at Yeenoghu's biggest tenements, such as the rejection of modernity and civilization, their submission to the survival of the fittest and the authority of strength in society, and finally, the preservation of nature and favor towards the wilderness, and looked at different ways I could interpret that in a more positive or neutral environment. For example, I personally looked a lot at many of the different philosophical writings on the importance of returning to nature, not only from romantic writers, but also from more extreme examples such as Alf or the Unabomber Ted Kaczynski. Now, Kaczynski in particular, I found interesting in his ability to rationalize how modernity and civilization strips individuals of their own autonomy and forces them to become dependent on the state. I took that as a way for me to look at the main antagonists' own viewpoints of modernity and the Kalian Empire and say, the more that we allow them to try to regain what they've lost, the more danger we're going to be in. This then trickled down into the organization of the packs themselves. I specifically thought there'd be an interesting idea of, in keeping with the more individualistic and rugged wilderness type of lifestyle and society that Yeenoghu prizes, I made each of the different packs have a specific distinct function that operates independently from each other. For example, you have the shepherds, those that look after the Lukrata. You have the tanners, those that work with armor and create their own defenses and specialized works that Gnolls can wear, all out of natural parts such as animal hides and even leather. You also have the herbalists and druids, the hunters, and so on and so forth. I then took this idea and combined it with an interesting idea of naming each one of them after dog breeds. For example, the Moody, the Shih Tzus, the St. Bernards, and the Borzois. And one additional feature I then decided to add on to was purely based on their origins and connections to hyenas. One thing I found while researching hyenas, specifically spotted hyenas from Tanzania, is that the females of the species are actually intersex. And while these appendages aren't specifically used for reproduction, they can still be used in order to maintain social hierarchy and cohesion within groups. I then translated this into my interpretation of the Gnolls, in which each Gnoll has two forms they can take, their divine and natural form. And in each one, I wrote it in a way that one form took on specifically male inherent traits, while the other had more female-coded abilities. Specifically, the divine form was the form that had a direct connection to Yeenoghu and strength and authority, more quote-unquote masculine traits, whereas the female form was more focused on raising young ones and leading in a communal lifestyle, which is more focused on typically female traits, at least within Western culture. I took this idea of a Gnoll being able to swap between these forms and created my own interpretation on how a Gnoll would specifically see themselves, their fellow Gnolls, their god, as well as their own place in nature, in a way that was both informed by the real-life biology of hyenas, as well as remaining as faithful as possible to the original lore and sources. And again, this was just my personal interpretation of Gnolls. I highly encourage all of you listening to try out your own variations and interpretations of what a Gnoll is to you or what you want them to be. So, having made it this far into the video, I want to thank you all for listening, and I hope you all enjoyed this first episode of Screen Chat. I hope you've learned a lot about Gnolls, and I can't wait to see everyone else's own interpretations of how Gnolls function and how we can continue to use them in one of the greatest role-playing games ever. Feel free to tune in on May 26th, where I will be going over Gnoll stat blocks, their allies, and run a few practice examples for Gnoll encounters you could use in your own campaigns. Thank you for listening! Hey everyone, this is Charlie here again at the end of the video. Just wanted to give you a quick rundown on this episode. Sorry I came out a day late. Unfortunately, I forgot about Mother's Day being on the 14th. And the last thing I wanted was to rush out a subpar or uninformed video for you all. That being said, I still hope you enjoyed the first episode of Screen Chat. I'm currently wrapping up production on episode 8 of Yugoloth Tabletop, so expect that on May 21st at 6 p.m, followed by the next episode on June 1st, and the finale on June 11th. As I mentioned at the end of the episode, Screen Chat Episode 2, Understanding Gnolls, Combat and Stat Blocks, will come out on May 26th at 6 p.m. and will continue being regularly published on the 16th and 26th of every month from then on. All music used in this episode are licensed under a Creative Commons 4.0 license and can be found in the pastebin link below. All sound effects used in this episode are licensed under a Creative Commons 1, 3, or 4 license and can be found in the pastebin link below as well. Thank you so much for listening. I can't wait to see you for our next big episode.